Welcome, everybody. Once again, I am so excited to be here with you because today I have a very special guest. She has a huge place in my heart, and I don't even know how to describe our relationship, except to start with, she means so much to me. And on top of that, we have not discussed what it is she's going to contribute today, but this is Turbo Rainbow, and I think I'll leave how I know her and how we got into this conversation. I will start with. So, Turbo is my collaborator, my backbone in terms of all technical things, but she's also a strategist. And I trust and respect her so much. I don't think I could keep on doing the entrepreneurial side of my work without having her or someone at that level that I could collaborate with, because it just feels actually quite lonely. And that's an odd word for me to use because I'm a self-preservation type. I'd like to be alone. I'd like to do things myself. I like to not depend on anyone in a certain way, just make my own decisions. And yet, when it comes to business, it shows that we all need to be part of the world, to be in a tribe, to have one-to-one connections. And somehow, just being an entrepreneur, and it's not even about making money, when you have a business where it becomes a business when you're trying to do anything out in the world to extend a message. It's now called a business, even if you are in the hole making money. It's really not about money. And for some reason, I just think it's really interesting that for doing that, it's so unfamiliar to me personally that she has stepped into my life in this huge way because of my profound respect and love for her. She
Mm.
just has a special place. But that's enough said about that. I'm sure you want to know what she has to say and why she's here. So, when we first began to talk about uh, what would you want to contribute, because I always get triggered by somebody's message, triggered in a good way. Oh, you have a point of view that I would like to share. And that's behind my inviting every guest so far. And so that came up, and you know me, all of you listeners who've been listening to these Thursday musings or are in a class or a meeting of mine, you know how the word awareness is important. And yet I stay careful with that word because many people do not understand the specific jargon that that word belongs to a certain pathway. And we'll get clear on that, but let's bring Turbo on because I said the word awareness. She said the word awareness, and I said, oh, you're using it like insight. And that's what I tried to get away with, because you wouldn't say, you wouldn't own a revelation as yours. Awareness for me is when you step outside of the personal, like your personal preference, your personal opinion, your personal insight that usually comes from the mind. When we use the word awareness from the non-dual, you've stepped into the universe's perspective, the divine's perspective, something larger than your insight. And so take it away, Turbo. What happened after I said that?
Hmm. So I think I got I didn't want to pivot away from the word awareness. I remember immediately wanting to create a deeper understanding of that word, and then what came to mind was awareness ladder. And before we really get into the minutia of that, one of the things that I really liked about what you said just now was that awareness is the bigger divine space behind the personal. And I think when you first start to hear the word awareness, you can feel like it doesn't make any sense, or um, it can almost feel like an attack. At least that's how I perceived it. It was like an attack on my personal beingness, because it meant that I needed to take responsibility for my humanness. And I didn't yet understand that it was behind the human. So the human is this identity, this personality, this flavor that I really like. I like the flavor of me, but behind the flavor of me is this witness, the one that's witnessing me making mistakes, the one that's witnessing me make choices, the one that's witnessing me experience exhaustion or elation or whatever, the one that is consistently okay. You know, the human, the identity, the the experience of the human is beautiful, and also it can be heavy, and it can
Mm.
be exhausting, and it can feel like drudgery sometimes, if I'm honest. And then the awareness behind that, the isness of all things, is never tired, is always available for just a little bit more grace and patience and compassion. It's the one that reminds me that it's okay to be tired, it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to learn. So,
Can
uh,
I stop you right there
yeah,
one
please do.
second?
Yeah.
So you said something perfect for anyone who's still confused about using that word. And I actually know a lot of people who are. They steer away from it because they don't want to step on any toes and say it wrong. And it still feels like my awareness because it's linguistically that wouldn't be incorrect. It's just uh, so you said mistakes. That is from the personal
Hmm.
to awareness. There are no mistakes. So where you said uh, I can be tired in my humanness, but awareness is never tired. So, and I love that you talked about the witness. So, right here, if we just put a little space for those people who it feels like that to them, like they're catching up to us using this word. It feels scary because they don't quite get it. What if we took a moment in our own experience? Of course, we're going to feel the personal. That's the human that Turbo just mentioned. And we acknowledge that, we respect that. And I think it's important to label it like tired or heavy, like you did, because that is the first step, I believe, even though this is not a cognitive experience, the brain does it lead this because the brain is limited to the world. But it's the first step to disidentifying, which is another big word, but it's a first step, I think, to stepping back to find the witness, to label it, because it gives a little distance from whatever it is you're feeling. Something is aware of that.
Hmm.
So please go ahead. But I hope that that just makes a big bookmark, if you will, a marker for people if they're re-listening. And I do know people who listen more than once. And thank you for that. because it tells me how committed you are
Mm.
uh, to communicating and understanding what we're sharing. So thank you, Turbo. Go ahead.
Mm. So I would like to piggyback on what you just said about the and one, I love conversating with you. This is really fun. And two, I want to slow down because I can feel the one in me that wants to rush through the message. But it took me years to understand myself and my practices, and so I want to remember that each step is just as valuable as the last. And that's exactly really what we're talking about, this awareness ladder.
So
So,
wait. So let's take this as slowly, even if we need to do a second or a third
mm,
interview. Let's not go through it. Let's just each step. I mean, even before we get to a step, let's define our words. You said, and I don't even know how you got to this insightful place because you didn't do it through the pathways that I know. You had you had a smattering of this and this and this and this field, but I don't know how you put it together. But you said self, to know myself. That's another word. It's small self or big self. That's another word people feel very confused about.
right.
Which self are you talking about? What do you understand? From the witness or from the individual? Which self were you just referring to?
Well, before we answer that question, I feel like we have to go back to that place of the witness, right? Because in order to understand the little self different from the big self, there has to be that witness. And my original the original moment where I understood that there was a witness behind all of it was when I accidentally found myself in a meditative state. And I think we have these really big ideas around what meditation should be. And so people like really shy away from it or even specifically try to make it something. And that can make it way more complicated than it needs to be. And I think also specifically, it just gets people to not try it. So I'm just going to say from my seat that the biggest and only thing that is necessary is for us to close our eyes. And from the moment that you close your eyes and just take a deep breath, you can feel your nervous system start to slow down. The volume goes up on your body senses. The mind, which is always moving, is no longer attached to what we see. It's not like, oh, look, I'm there and there and there and there and there. And look at all the stories that I have. It's like, oh, just right here. So it all of a sudden kind of becomes this separate frequency instead of the I am, and this is what I think about it. It's just talking. And so behind the mind, I can hear also the bigger me, which is just breathing, which is just allowing, which is just love. And so when I close my eyes, all of a sudden I come to understand that there's a couple of different experiences of me happening at the same time. And that
So let's do this as a conversation because you say so much that's important. And uh, I know our people, and so I want to be sure that they're in this conversation too. So there is a mystic that's very popular, and I happen to have known him well. And I was reminded yesterday that he always started his talks with everything I say has some truth and some that's not true.
mm,
And truth means only not that it's a lie, but that it's 100% true. And so uh, you are very correct in my understanding that it is helpful for most people to close your eyes. However, Soft eyes with open eyes is another path that many people are determined to take, because you never need to close your eyes, and it gives you a different perspective on the world. And what happened to you without intention in that meditative space can happen with your eyes open. It can happen in the middle of a fight. This man was saying he was yelling at his son uncontrollably. And all of a sudden, right in the middle of the yelling, he got the perspective that was beyond thinking, like beyond what are you doing? The understanding that there was no difference between he and his son, there was nothing wrong, and he went to that witness way beyond. So let's share what's your experience so that everyone is included when they're not following this way.
Well, that was just an example. That was just how I found the witness. But how I use the witness often is to remember what it felt like in that moment. So when I found the witness, I had to be 21 years old. And that doesn't mean that I knew exactly how to go back there all the time. That was just my first experience. And then I probably didn't look for the witness for a while. I just experienced it. um, it wasn't until I was in some tumultuous situations that I had that same experience as that man, where either I was yelling or someone was yelling at me. And I could all of a sudden, it was like time slowed down and there was this spreading of experience, and I could see my body doing something and I could even feel it. But then there was something behind that that was like, this is hilarious. Look at
And it
how,
wasn't even you, you had that distance.
yeah,
You were not this person that was yelling. You were something more. I,
right.
I want to add something too, because my favorite thing you said about meditation, you didn't use this word, but it's what gets in the way of people experiencing the benefits is intention and expectation. If you sit down, any you meaning you, me, or any of our listeners, sit down and expect to the mind to be quiet, hope for this experience that you had in the middle of your struggle. I'm sorry, you're putting a barrier into your experience.
Mm,
Likely, not as like everything I say is not true either.
right.
But let's be aware, but using that word aware as the deepening. Let's watch ourselves with even our beliefs and our
Yeah.
intentions.
Mhm.
And and is there control? Are you trying to get something out of your meditation or get somewhere? In your examples, you weren't trying. There was no intention or expectation. And so with that man too that was yelling. So, we're taught when we learn meditation, do it this way, do it that way. And so many of us are trying to lessen the suffering through meditation and
Mm,
trying to get somewhere. Just be aware of it, nothing else to do.
mm. There's the word again, awareness.
I heard
It,
it. I heard it. I
yeah,
heard it. But let's be the witness to the self that's
yeah,
having that thought, that motive, that intention. We are not the feeling. The feeling comes and goes.
right.
There's something that is consistent to us our whole lives that is us, but it's unnameable,
Mm,
just like awareness, indefinable,
mm,
just like the witness. And the witness isn't a something. And that's why we haven't been taught to find it, because
mm,
of the very concrete world.
mm. I think we are trying to find it. There's a lot of seekers in the world now that are noticing that there is just something more, something beyond.
Yes, yes, there are many paths, you're correct. I just mean we in our conditioning from
Yes.
our parents. Uh,
Hmm.
it's the rare person that was raised with looking for awareness, looking for the witness.
Hmm.
You know, we've been trained to fix ourselves, do better, think better, get more, you know, whatever you need to do to yourself to do all that.
Okay, so let's piggyback on that. So we get into these hyper fixated behaviors, right? Trying to fix ourselves or scrutinizing this or judging that or whatever. And it was in my like tumultuous moments when the witness started to show up more and more, where I kept finding myself being like, oh, that's so interesting. Look at how my human is behaving in response to this stimuli. Wow, I wonder if I could just shift just a little bit how that would change this experience. And over time, I started noticing like I was personally addicted to making a problem out of nowhere because I wanted attention or I wanted to feel love. And so I would try to manipulate a situation to get it. And it was the witness, the space of the witness, the space of awareness that helped me release the shame. So as long as I believe that I am my behavior and I am my identity, I'm trapped in this. And then I might as well just be addicted because this is working, right? I'm getting the thing, blah, blah, blah. But when I could lean out and actually just watch my human behave, I was like, oh, wow, look, you created that behavior when you were little because you really wanted to get this from your mom. And it worked then, but it's not working now in this adult relationship. What if you just pivoted a little bit and allowed yourself to receive love differently? And it was hard at first, because you're used to, I mean, my human is used to just doing whatever she wants to get this need met. Um, but over time, I realized that the witness is the most patient of all parents because
Mhm.
it is beyond the shame, it's beyond the control. And it helps me release the shame of behaving in specific ways and just love myself for what I did to protect myself or get what I needed. And then also continue to love myself into a better way of being for my human, at least. Um,
Okay, so can I add here? This is gorgeous. This is going to be so helpful. And for people who don't use the word shame or feel they don't have it, there are people who come to meetings and say, I don't have that thing,
mm,
but we all have judgment.
mm,
We've decided this is good, this is bad. And that's really, really primitive brain thinking before we become adults, before we have this fancy, even insight like you had. Yeah, I was raised that way. I can understand that. That's all very mental, but it's like you weren't coming from the mental, you were coming from awareness, and then your mental explained it to you, like,
mm,
right? But awareness doesn't speak that way, your childhood and the this and the that. It's just a gentle moving, and then the mind gets busy and tries to make sense out of what's happening. But for those that are not, and since so many of my people are Enneagram people, eights on the Enneagram don't go there right away. But eights do have judgment. So that's their word to jump into, this is good, this is bad.
mm.
And if anybody thinks they don't judge good or bad, let me just take 1 minute, if you will, because it's my new favorite idea. And I want to see how you respond, Turbo. Let's say you're having stomach cramps. You're driving in the car, you're going to pick up your delightful son. you're having stomach cramps all of a sudden, and please forgive me for being graphic, but then you have loose bowels and you soil yourself. Now, all of our listeners, please go into this situation. Imagine it's you. You're driving somewhere, maybe in your work clothes. If you're retired, you have nice clothes on, going to meet a friend for coffee. And all of a sudden, you have stomach pains, and then you lose control of your bowels. Who of you starts to think, geez, it feels, I think I'm getting some kind of stomach virus. I wonder what I should take or eat. Like, who is neutrally responding with their intellect brain, or who feels bad and ashamed first?
Mm.
Raise your hand, even if you're alone, if you feel bad or ashamed first.
Mm.
You want to clean yourself up. You want to cover it up. You want to get it fixed before anybody smells your car, sees you in these soiled things. That is so young.
Mm.
And here's why I bring that up. It's not about how you were raised. Were you toilet trained in the best, highest, sophisticated way? There is in adults a certain revulsion toward this natural bowel process. And you can just, even if your parents toilet trained you in the most uh, enlightened way, if you will, when there was a big mess in your diapers, very few adults said, yay, I get to clean this up, whoopee doo, right? You got a frown, you got a tension, you got a something, and it's contagious. And when we're infants, we only have the brain power of good and bad. This
Mm.
brings a smile. This brings contraction. We don't have words for it. It's pre-verbal, this good and bad. So I just want us all to join together. Doesn't matter how psychologically uh, fit you are versus someone who feels messed up and traumatized. We all have this that comes out first, and awareness is not part of that.
Mhm.
And so that's the gift. So I know I intruded with that, but uh, it's a way to join for everyone when they don't connect to my language or your language, but know that there's a word that's, or a feeling, or a body sensation of contraction always in the outside world on every subject, and it comes first and louder than your intellect.
Mm. One, this story was really fun. I loved the thought experiment. I actually really enjoyed it because can even remember a moment when something like that happened. And um, what I wanted to say was that awareness creates a space of permission where it all of a sudden can be kind of funny. And I
Yeah.
wasn't on my way to go pick up my son. He was in the car with me. And the first thing I said was, "Oh, shit." And he goes, "What just happened?" And I just started laughing. And I was like, "I'm going to need to pull over and take care of this." And he goes, "What happened?" And like, I could have made myself wrong. I could have freaked out on him. I could have created a problem. But instead, I just was like, "This is hilarious. We need to pull over and this is what I'm going to have to do." And he goes, "You did what?" And instead of making myself wrong or crying, I didn't reveal any shame, but I can attest to the first flooding of feeling where I was like, "Oh, oh crap." Pun
And
intended.
I want to say what I have observed about your parenting. is something that we have all wished to do, but not all of us have been capable.
Mm,
And he motivates, brings out the highest in you.
mm,
You can do for him things that you wouldn't do for yourself. I witnessed it.
mm,
It- and it's awareness that gives you that possibility. Otherwise, you would be reacting just from the old trained self, whatever version that would be. But he is a symbol of awareness in a way. I never thought of it that way, but he symbolizes possibility. He
mm.
symbolizes another response. And I think you have a sense that you're doing a really good job raising him. But I want to say I've witnessed it, and I don't even see that much of it, but I hear your thinking. I hear how you pivot for him, not in an indulgent way, but in a bigger way than the personal.
Mm. I receive that fully. Thank you. I work really hard at it. I
Yeah.
did.
Yes, but it's not hard work when you do it. So
You're
you're
right.
open to it, but it's not like work. Think of when you did a lot of work one week and you put that on Facebook. It wasn't that kind of work. It stretches your heart.
Mm,
That's what I've witnessed. It's your heart that allows your connection to, it's the personal love to your son, and maybe some history of what you know doesn't work, but it isn't you that does it. I'm very aware that you're open. And it takes openness. That's why the space that's created that you mentioned when you close your eyes in meditation, or just just the allowing, we could get there a bunch of ways. So is it too fast to mention what this ladder of awareness is? How would that intersect with these examples?
mm. I don't think it's too soon ever. But I think the ladder of awareness is um it's it's just taking one step at a time. And once you're on that step, you can't go back. So, when my first accidental experience of awareness, of the witness, what that did was create a myriad of questions. And so I was on that ladder now. I've tasted this experience. I get to ask myself a bunch of questions, but I don't really know how I got there. The next step would be accidentally experiencing it again and then being like, "Huh, that's interesting. How did how did that happen? How did that get there?" And then integrating the bridge between finding it and then getting there. The next, and I don't even want to say the next step, it's just these are the steps that happened to me is once I started to understand that I could tap into that witness at any time, that doesn't mean that I can change my behavior right away. Like, let's, as an example, my mother taught me temper, anger, yelling. So my human has internalized this. My body remembers how to yell, how to get angry, how easy it is, how fast, how efficient. It's my awareness while I'm yelling that's like, hey, take a breath. Look at what, and it's my awareness isn't saying these things. My awareness is just watching me. And then my mind is like, oh, that's right. There's something else going on here that is beyond this human moment. Is this what you really want to be doing right now? Do I want to spend the next day feeling guilty about this moment, or have I already reflected on this in the past and stop right now? So the awareness creates this gap where I can pause, reflect. I can stop myself in the moment And that doesn't, it's not always like that. But when we're talking about the ladder, for me, one of the rungs of the ladder is ownership, and that's many rungs up on the level of the awareness ladder. Like the first step of awareness is just allowing the witness to be there and not looking for more, right? Just, oh, there it is. That's cool. But now I'm so many steps ahead in this game. And since we're talking about my son, like he's made this game a little bit more potent and powerful. You are right. I am motivated by his presence, motivated by the desire to give him something that's rich and good and meaningful. And that means that I need to take ownership. And that rung is higher up. Man, I don't want to always own that my human just misbehaved. But man, do I sure feel better when I slow down and respond in a new way and offer him the respect that I would love to have mirrored back through that relationship, So I don't know if I answered your question or if it's
Yes,
something that I
I want
just,
to ask you, is that your term that you came up with, or does that come from a pathway, a ladder of awareness?
that came up when we were talking the other day,
Oh, okay.
when I
Okay.
didn't want to abandon the word awareness, then awareness ladder came in because to me, the
Uh-huh.
word awareness has been pivotal. I don't always go to the word witness because to me that feels, uh, um, it feels a little like dismissive of the power of awareness and how encompassing it can be. Um, the
But it
witness,
does describe pretty much because of linguistics, the stepping back, the stepping out, the stepping away. So it is really a great word. Uh, Sometimes we use, in non-duality, we talk about the local observer who first, let's say, watches you screaming and says, "Ooh, look, you're screaming," but you still want what you want in that local observer. You want the person to stop, or you want to discharge that energy, whatever it is. You still invested in the subject. And then we use the word witness to denote that place where you're actually not involved anymore emotionally in the outcome.
mm,
It's just a little further back. Uh, what I wanted to clarify a couple of things that you said, and you actually changed my mind about something. Because when previously, when I heard people say my awareness, I thought that that's so confusing to other people because it sounds like it's from the individual rather than what we've been talking about from the witness. My insight. You don't own it. It's beyond the you. But listening to you today, in terms of your ladder, I'm getting, for me, the second step is maybe owning my awareness. I know you've taken it further. It's just linguistics. You're not calling it yours anymore. You're experiencing it as the divine awareness, not my personal human awareness. But for people who haven't moved from, yeah, there is something that observes, here's where people get stuck. They think it's the brain. The brain is observing and the personality is doing, and it's still all the body. It hasn't opened yet that there's something outside of the personal. So I like my humanness, my individuality, and then my awareness, understanding that you're stepping into something. And I used to have a semantic problem when people said my awareness, because it sounded like it was coming from the personal self. And I know that the way you use it, you know, you're coming from the understanding that awareness is part of the divine, the universal. It's a presence that's not coming from the perspective of you're human. It's behind, around, excuse me. So, but today I'm realizing that in your ladder, for me, this could be the second step, if you will, or opening. I think I like that better. Opening to the next rung, that there's my personal self, and next I'm feeling the my awareness. Did you hear the part where I talked about the observer and the witness? That was also in that.
Yeah,
Okay.
all of it.
So in non-duality, we have the observer who's first still involved with, let's say, the yelling. You were yelling, and the observer, called the local observer, sees, look, I'm yelling. I thought I wouldn't yell more. It's not blah, 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 blah. But I still want the situation to change. I want the person to cooperate, or I want to release this energy. I'm still into it, but I'm noticing. And then behind the observer is the witness of the observer, who doesn't give a rip if you yell or you don't yell, because it's not involved in this. It's only accepting, it's only neutral. It's involved with everyone in the same way, not in your personal betterment or somebody else's whatever. So it's a new take for me on my awareness. It's now more okay, especially if people have the understanding that there is this other level, that there's a witness to my awareness
Mm.
that isn't trying to fix you, that isn't trying to change you, that has, it's not from the personal. It's just, so that's the grace of it, is that it's accepting of everything
Yeah.
beyond good and bad. If we bring it back to that primitive brain, there's nothing bad and there's nothing good.
Can
And
I
so
add to that?
it's a release, right?
I want to add to that because you said something earlier in our conversation that I think was really pivotal in the understanding of this. So the awareness is connected to all that is, it has no judgment. It is just an experience of peace. But you're feeling peace while you're witnessing, right? It's just it's just there. It has no skin in the game, right? It's just watching. But then because now you've leaned into the awareness, your mind's like, "Oh wait, that's right. I can I can conceptualize this. I can also pivot." So and then your body.
That's the person that's pivoting in
Right.
response
But
to
it's your mind,
awareness.
right? So if we could take this a step further, because we were talking about the ladder, one of the things that I heard maybe 2 to 4 years ago was body leads, mind follows. And when you think that you are your mind can tell you to do all sorts of stuff. And when you realize that you are not your mind and that you're not your body, you realize that your mind is a tool to be used. You can tell it what to do. I can tell it to look for proof of my good. I can tell it to look for proof of my worth. I can tell it to look for anything and it'll just do it on the spot. And if I don't tell it what to do, it will tell me what to do and it'll run my body ragged. And so one of the rungs on the ladder for me was slowing down and leaning into my awareness as much as possible so that I could see my body needing rest, so that I could respect my body's experience on earth and then allow my mind to be a bridge between awareness and my body. So the awareness, again, not having any judgment, is now seeing that my body is tired and that my mind is like, hey, work, 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 do, overgive, people please, etc., etc. And my body is so tired of doing this that without the space that the awareness has created, I couldn't see that that's what I was doing. And now all of a sudden, my mind can pivot, can shift. My body can tell my mind, hey, I actually need you to book some time for me this week. When are the periods when I can rest? And now I can use my mind as a vehicle for growth and change and evolution instead of the, oh, I was bad today because I yelled at my son. It's like, oh, look, I yelled at my son again today. Why did I do that? Was it because I didn't have enough rest? Was it because I believed that, it's just, it helped me slow down. Awareness has helped me be with the truth of who I am and then grow from that place instead of constantly be trying to fix or orchestrate or control or whatever. Um, and I loved what you said earlier, which is what I was piggybacking off of, is that the awareness isn't actually speaking. It just is a feeling. It doesn't talk the same, like you were saying. It's my mind trying to make sense of it and then my body catching up.
And
Um,
some people do hear from awareness. It depends on how your intuition comes. If your intuition comes through clairsentience, it'll feel like a body intuition. And you can have, I actually do hear words, but they're very simple.
right.
They're not but this, but that, and you could, or it has no judgment, but it could be, sometimes it's just a movement, but we do receive it different ways. I hope that our listeners can hear what Turbo is doing. She is doing a lot of integrating in that last share that she made. She's showing us how she takes cues from awareness and then integrates it into the personality with mind and body and action steps. And uh, I think that's something that we all do. It isn't part of awareness. It's part of our need to bring that space from awareness. And Turbo used the word peace, but it's not the kumbaya,
Yeah.
like the high of we're all connected. Like if when you have those moments and you're with a group and there's this gorgeous connection, it's the lack of suffering. It's the absence of suffering that people call peace. But it could be just space, because sometimes people don't notice it because it's not a high. It's so quiet. And I don't know who said that to you about the body leads. For some people, the body leads. For most of us, I think the mind is the loudest. Some people's body, they don't even hear their mind. Their body is like for a response, but that certainly isn't everyone. And uh, so our humanness can have different versions, but we will all be left with the challenge that Turbo is now demonstrating is okay. That's all great about all these characteristics of awareness, but tell me something about how I can live. Like, how is this going to make life easier, better, make me more functional, make me like myself, have better relationships? And many people take it into the get more, have more, and none of that is intentional from awareness. All of that is our interpretation. And I think there are a lot of benefits, and we will all find our own. But I think it's important to know that we're adding on lessons. All of these things are our interpretations, and we're going to do that. But it's not what pure awareness is, so far beyond our next action step. It almost, I hesitate to say this because most of the divine pathways have something in there that it's all for the good or it's all for your benefit. And awareness isn't into the benefits for some person and the personal. And it sounds like a downer at first because we want someone or something to care about us because we haven't cared enough and we have felt some lack. But if we actually realize that we're so unconditionally accepted just the way we are, just the way we've lived, that there's no improvement necessary, no fixing around the corner. There is so much potential for a new moment, for a new possibility, rather than repeating our personalities' ways. We're not even identified anymore with that, what was previously called a mistake,
Mm.
or our yelling, however we interpret that, or whatever it is. We're now in what I call freedom, is the lack of suffering and the openness to the new moment of possibility.
Mm.
So I think we're at a turning point. I think we could complete for today. Do you feel complete for today, or do you have something back from what I just said?
I think we can be complete for today. Of course, we could keep wrapping. My mind's like, yeah, three more things, but I know the pace of your videos and the amount of space that we filled feels nourishing and alive with potential and learning and expansion. And so I feel complete.
Well, thank you, Turbo. And I'm going to put this in the email that comes with this video. But if you would like to work with Turbo, she is a brand strategist. I want to get the right word, so I'm reading, a graphic designer and a web designer. And we'll put her info along with this video. And if you have any desire to do this kind of work with her, I say go for it because she's magic to me.
Oh, thank you.